Welcome to another episode of the Minority Trailblazer podcast. And I'm your host, Greg E. Hill, the Culture Change Agent. And I got a classic show for y'all today. I'm going to be real with the audience. This show was supposed to air on season 2, but I just had to share it today. Honestly, because I messed up. I was supposed to be doing the last episode. I'm going to get Travis Jackson, the CEO of HBCU Pride Nation, to actually turn the table and interview me so I can share kind of my story, the first season takeaways from the podcast, and answer any questions. But I wasn't able to do that, so I didn't want to lie with y'all. So I was scrambling. I said, boom, I got it. This guest is going to be amazing, going to add a lot of value. I didn't want to share it on season 1, but I had to share it on season 1. And I've been hearing your requests. I've been getting the request to come on the show. I'm definitely getting back to everybody, and I can't wait to share the new additions we have to the whole production of this thing for season 2. Quick house notes before I get into the intro. 1, we have just passed 7,500 downloads, which is freaking phenomenal. Like, to not have a celebrity host, I'm not a celebrity host, to not have all this, we just organic growth through people like yourself that are listening, that are tuning in, that are sharing with your friends. So I appreciate it. Continue to do that. Please, please, please. Second, and I always harp on it, and I'm going to continue harping on it. Please, if you haven't already, leave a review. It really helps us on iTunes. If you're listening via SoundCloud and you like what you're hearing, follow us on SoundCloud, so we can just continue to provide great content. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, all your support. I mean, it started from November 25th, and it go to March 3rd, and we've had over 7,500 downloads. That means 7,500 people have listened to these podcasts, and I'm getting emails, I'm getting Twitter, I'm getting Instagram. Everybody's adding me, showing what they love about the show, maybe some improvements, and I just love the engagement. So let me jump right in to the show. I'm excited to introduce today's featured guest, man. I've known this brother since freaking 7 years, since he first came to North Carolina A&T State University, man. Legit guy. Let me just take a little sneak peek into his bio, which is crazy, right? He's the first student ever from North Carolina A&T to receive the prestigious Fulbright scholarship. He's currently pursuing his PhD at the University of Southern California in computer science with focus on artificial intelligence. He holds a master's degree in robotics from the University of Birmingham in England through a Fulbright postgraduate award, and he attained his bachelor's of science degree in computer engineering and a minor in philosophy, which I didn't even know, from North Carolina A&T State University. And during college, he worked as the president of the Beta Epsilon period chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Shout out to the bros. He also served on the Chancellor's Academic Review Commission, Regional Board of the National Society of Black Engineers, and during the summer breaks in college, he conducted research in robotics at the University of Michigan and Carnegie Mellon. His first internship post-grad from University of Birmingham was with NASA, Jet Propulsion Pack in Florida, NASA. And ultimately, he plans to obtain a doctorate degree in robotics and use his expertise to build a comprehensive robot program that impacts inner city youth. I say all that to say, and guess what? I know reading that bio, you might like, man, it's probably like 34 or 40. This guy's only 25 years old. It doesn't make any sense. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my brother, my Fulbright scholar. I hope you hear the energy in my voice. I'm excited. This episode is going to be life-changing. I would like to introduce Emmanuel Johnson to the Minority Trailblazer podcast. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you for having me on.
Man, I'm glad you're here, man. So I know you're familiar with the show, but to all new listeners to the Minority Trailblazer podcast, we always start the show off with a quote. And I'm going to put it in the hands of Manny. I'm just going to call him Manny in this interview. Manny to give us a quote that he lives by and share a story about how he uses that quote in his everyday life.
So the quote that I live by is one from Henry Longfellow, and it goes, "The heights by great men, reached and kept, were not obtained through sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards through the night." And I think that really embodies what I do on a daily basis, where I look at success and where I want to reach as not something that It's going to happen sporadically, but it's something that I have to constantly put forth the effort while everybody else may be out having fun, enjoying life, kind of cutting down on that wasted time.
And can you tell us maybe a specific story where you use that principle? Like, what if you could pinpoint a night or a day where there was a lot of stuff going on, that was great stuff, you can have a lot of fun, but you like, yo, sticking to your principles, what I'm doing right now is much more important. Can you share a story like that?
I mean, I would say it even now, and it's not necessarily, kind of look on having fun in a bad way, but
Uh-huh.
when you look at the fact that I'm in a PhD program where right now I'm looking at a lot of my friends who I went to undergrad with, have, nice jobs, nice houses, nice personal items, but as a graduate student, you're not getting paid much, but you're constantly grinding, spending 10, 12 hours days working on a research project, whereas a lot of people, are waking up every day, going to work, coming home, and they're having that free time to do what they want.
I read a bit of your bio. I highlighted North Carolina A&T. I mean, when dude walked across the stage with all these tassels, I've never seen so many. Outside of a brother I know by Jonathan McCoy, I've never seen as many tassels I have on Manny when he walked across the stage. I mean, working for NASA, Carnegie Mellon. Like, when I say University of Michigan, University of Carnegie Mellon, these are some of the top institutions of robotics and what they do in their field. And I mean, it's kind of amazing. It's like to stand back and see at 25, he's able to do and accomplish that many things. Fulbright scholar, crazy. But you already know this show, we dig deep into personal stories. So we're going to transition into our first round. And if you're new to the show, our show is broken into three parts. The past, where we showcase our interview guests. We showcase where he come from, his past, and how he got to where he is today. The second part is the present. So he shares kind of what he's working on, the projects, and gives actionable advice for those that are looking to get into his field, some tips. And then the third part of the show is the future round, where he shares what's his future look like as far as since 2016, as well as even beyond, way beyond. So, and at the end, we also have the exciting culture change round. So stay tuned for that. So back to the point, we're going to dig into your personal background, man. Can you share with the audience where you come from and who you are?
All right, man, that's a that's a big question. So a little bit about my background. I was originally born in Monrovia, Liberia. Came to the U.S. when I was 8 years old, and January 1999. We came as refugees because at that time there was a civil war going on in Liberia, which started in '89 and until like 2003. So came here, grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. I ended up graduating from high school in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Went to A&T
Hold up,
after
hold up.
A&T.
Wait. We got to dig. I ain't going to let you slide, man. So, in high school, tell us about your time in high school, man, because I know your story very well, man. So, tell us about your time at high school, your grades, and kind of that transition into North Carolina A&T.
All right, cool. So I ended up going to three different high schools. And early on in high school, academics wasn't something I really focused on, man. I really just kind of went into school to hang out with my boys, man, and wasn't really focused. When I finished my sophomore year, I had a 2.3 GPA.
In high
You
school?
know, yeah, yeah. In high school, by my sophomore year, I had a 2.3, man. And to kind of be very, very transparent, man. All I really did was just kind of, I was a class clown. Made fun, got into trouble here and there, and school wasn't something that really mattered to me. And I don't think I really had teachers who pushed me or saw anything special in me. To the point where I remember trying to talk to somebody about my future goals and wanting to go to college, and they told me to be realistic. Um, so yeah, man, that was kind of like the starting point. Towards the end of high school, I kind of got back on the ball, realized that college was something I wanted to do, and I remember vividly it was this SAT class I took by towards the end of my sophomore year, and I remember sitting in there and barely being able to read the prompt or finish the math problem and feeling so dumb. And it was at that point in my life that I vowed, that, from that point forward, I never put myself in a position for somebody else to make me feel that stupid.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And that was kind of like the initial driving force to just be able to be at a level where I wasn't the laughing stock of the group.
Mm-hmm. And how'd you make that transition going into your junior and senior year? Even though, because from what I know, what did you graduate your senior year of high school with?
A 2.9.
So 2.9. So you made a couple changes, but still, you still graduated with a 2.9. So walk us through how you, with a 2.9, and your transition to A&T, because I know especially, talk us to that, and especially the financial piece of coming to A&T and affording college.
A lot of it started my junior year. As I said, I went to three different high schools. When I was a junior, I was at Willenboro High School, and that was the first year I decided to take academics serious, and I wanted to pursue a degree in computer engineering. And at the time, I didn't have the grades. I took my first programming class with Mr. Merrill. And so I come into the class 3 weeks late. I ended up having the highest grade in the class towards the end of the semester. And, he looks at me, he says, it seems like you have a natural skill for it. And I said, man, sitting in front of a computer all day programming, nah, that's not something I want to do. Um, and even with the grades, when he told me I could look into that, I told him, hey, I don't have the grades for it. And he put me in touch with this guy at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. That was originally where I was thinking I was going to head. And I used to have to go to these seminars once a month. And basically, I would drive an hour up, to this guy's office, shake his hand, sit through the same presentation, go back home. And the reason why I did this was he told me if I was able to show my dedication to wanting to go to this university, they had this program called Equal Opportunity Program, which is for students in New Jersey from an underprivileged background to get access to college. So I used to do that all the time. And that's where I started to learn about what college entails, scholarships, and what I needed to do to apply, as well as begin to build that rapport with them. My senior year, I transferred to New Brunswick High School, and I met Mr. William Lewis Dunbar, who was an English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first day I walked into this class, it's this old guy that has a kufi on. And he's like, yeah, man. I'm like, whoa, man. I'm looking at him like, man, we got a military general, old school military guy teaching us English. But, we walk in, and the first thing he says the name of the game is money. And his thing was trying to get us the most amount of money that we can to go to school. And upon speaking to him in the first couple of days, he's told me, if you're serious about this, meet me every morning at 6 in the morning, and we'll go through all of this. So throughout my senior year, I would come in, literally wake up every morning at 5, be at the school at 6, working on scholarship application, essays, and all of that. And he was the one that actually took me down to visit North Carolina A&T because he used to have a HBCU tour.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that process that I started to understand what it took to win money in school. And he helped me find the initial funds that I needed to go to undergrad. Because my grades were so low, most schools either didn't accept me, or when they accepted me, they didn't provide any financial aid. So when I was going down to A&T, I didn't qualify for most of the scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally, based on help that I received from New Brunswick, especially New Brunswick Education Foundation and Mr. William Lewis Dunbar, I had enough money to go down there for one semester.
Mm-hmm.
I took out a few loans as well as local scholarships, but I didn't know how I was going to finish off my 4 years. I ended up getting into NJIT, and it would have been, from a financial standpoint, being a Jersey resident, it would have been a lot easier to go that route. But there was something about North Carolina A&T that really captured me. And although I didn't have the money, I took that chance. And after my first semester, I had a 4.0, and I still couldn't find money to go to school.
And I'm going to interject real quick because it's crazy. I still remember to this day, I was in the library. I think it was my junior year or senior year. I don't remember. And I don't know how we bumped into each other. I think through Mitchell Brown or something like that.
Exactly.
And you told me your story. I was like, this is, and I barely knew you from anything. You told me a lot about your story. And I was like, bro, you got a 4.0 from, you graduated high school from a 2.9. First semester, an engineer had a 4.0, and you still could not find any money. You said, I don't really know how. And I remember before leaving the library, it's like, bro, I really don't know how I'm going to get this money or whatever, but we're going to make a way. And then kind of, so share, how did you make that way? Because it's like your first semester in A&T, you had a 2.9 in high school, first semester banging out 4.0, but you still are coming up short. So explain, like, how did you get the money?
So it was two things that happened. Well, one, I went and spoke with one of my, at that time I was a double major, and I spoke with one of my department chair, and one of the things that he told me was that, for you to be a minority in engineering and not have the money to continue school, it's a problem. And his thing was you need to learn how to find that money to keep going. And then I remember speaking with my mentor from high school, and it's interesting because I call him and I'm breaking down on the phone like, man, I followed your instructions. I'm here. I have the money, and all he told me was make it happen. And he hung up the phone.
That's all he did. He said,
That's
just
all he did. But for me, that was the driving force to say, you know what, man, now you're on your own. You gotta make it happen. And when I tell you from that point on, I applied for any and every scholarship that I qualified for. And as you start to apply for them, man, you realize that they all want similar things. There's a certain structure to the way they ask your question. There's a certain response that most of these scholarship programs are looking for. So I started creating my database of questions that they could ask, answering those questions. Had a collection of letters of recommendation from professors, and really started building my profile as well as being actively involved both in a leadership capacity and in school in terms of getting good grades and making sure that I was also helping other people.
got you, man. So take us like, what changed in your mindset from high school to your first year in college to really kind of think on that level and put in that groundwork? Because that seemed like you were a whole different dude 2 years ago in high school, and then you first got to college and it was just a whole different person. Like, if you could, like, what was the boiling point? What was the tipping point to making that change to kind of where you are? Because like I said, you come from your family, you migrated to the States at 8 years old. You had no model outside of people that came into your life while you were in high school, but you had nobody to model yourself off. So what things did you do to completely change your mindset?
I think for me, it was a couple of things. One, going through my senior year and having been rejected from so many scholarships, so many university, made me realize that one, rejections are going to happen. And being that I hated being rejected so many times, I didn't want that to happen again. And then two, when you change schools as much as I did, you start to realize what's really important. So it's not necessarily trying to attach yourself to a specific clique or a specific identity, but you realize that knowledge is the only thing that transitions when you move from one place to another, because oftentimes that identity that you built in one location may or may not mean anything when you move on.
Mm-hmm.
So during the end of high school, I started building that understanding. And then when I came into undergrad, being that I didn't want to fail again, I pushed so hard to be the best that I could because I saw what the end goal could be in it, based on what I seen with other students I went to high school with. So for me, man, it was I had this dream, and God blessed me with the opportunity that I worked 2 years for, and I didn't want to screw it up. So I put everything I had on the table.
So you took us through high school and how you changed your life around. Then A&T, boom, first semester got a 4.0 doing it. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit to senior year and when you're doing the application, because but most people don't know, and hopefully you can share, outside of getting the Fulbright scholarship, and I want you to walk us through that whole process, you did also apply for the road. So kind of, if you could share with our audience a little bit about the why you even thought and who encouraged you to apply for these scholarships, because coming from your background, and even though you have overcame a lot of obstacles, like what encouraged you to apply to the roads and then the Fulbright, and then kind of walk us through each.
Um, so as I was reaching my junior year in undergrad, somebody had put me in touch with the scholarship office, and at the time, well, it actually began my sophomore year. I had a professor, Dr. Forsman. He and I were having a casual conversation about what I wanted to do with my life, and what saw myself doing after undergrad. And my original idea was to go get an MBA. And I remember this vividly in our conversation. He said, if you don't go as far as a PhD, you'll be doing yourself an injustice. And I think up until that point, nobody in my life had told me I had the capability to pursue a PhD. And just to know that somebody had that much faith in me made me that much more confident. And prior to undergrad, I used to follow one of my mentors not mentors, but one of the people I used to look up to was Dr. Randall Pinkett. And I remember he had a Rhodes Scholar. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and I was like, man, if anything, I want to. If he could do it, I could do it. And that was always my mindset. So coming into my junior and senior year, I started learning about all these different fellowships, and based on my track record, when I was originally introduced to Miss Anna Whiteside in the honors program, she thought I qualified for a lot of these programs. And so my mindset was, well, if you believe that I'll qualify, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I applied for the Truman Fellowship, the Goldwater Fellowship, the Rhodes, Marshall, and Fulbright. And one of the reasons I applied for a lot of those, one, I had an interest in education and education policy in underprivileged communities, so that's where the Truman fell into place. The Goldwater was just for students who had a solid research and academic background in engineering. So I applied for that, and then I was also interested in getting the international perspective because I knew that in the long run I had goals of looking at things from an international perspective. And I thought that these awards would not only afford me that opportunity, but also it definitely provides certain access and recognition and notoriety as you travel around. And so, out of all of those awards that I applied for, I only won one.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's interesting because when you look at the story now, you don't hear about all the other ones that I lost. You hear about the one that I won. So it's interesting how when stories are told, and it always baffles me how people put so much emphasis on not trying, but you got to realize that, man, sometimes the people that you look at as being successful have failed at so many things, and that's why they're successful. You don't understand how many rejection letters I received before I got Fulbright.
That's crazy. Like, kid you not, when I was doing my research before this and getting your bio online, Emmanuel Johnson Fulbright, I could see articles all across the web. You smiling, do all this stuff, all the accolades and whatnot with the whoop. But during this interview, and I already knew this, but sharing with the audience that you applied to 7 of other 8 institutions and fellowships and got rejected, and it's not like you were an average student. You were and that is one thing also I do want you to speak on, because I know you're very knowledgeable and observant about it. You are one of the best, if not one of the best, if not the best student in your department at A&T, or one of the more accomplished ones at A&T State University. But when you're trying to reach the top of something, there's so many others that are freaking phenomenal. So could you speak on, from your perspective, some of the things you kind of realized or that you thought about during the process of applying, and you kind of internalized within yourself, because as far as like how big really the world and the competition really is.
I mean, I think, yeah, you really hit on it, man. There are some very talented people out here, and those who will blow you out the water even if you think you're the best. And I think for me, it's always remaining humble and understanding that the accolades, the awards, and all of that does not make you who you are. It's what you do on a consistent basis to develop yourself, and a continuous development. Because when I was applying for those things, I was at the top in the college engineering at A&T, but everybody else who were competing for the same fellowship were at the top in their department in these various universities. So it can, I mean, when you are originally applying, it's like, man, what really gives me the right to apply for this? And you start to feel a certain level of inadequacy, but just having been awarded the award and meeting other students, not only do you feel like you belong, but you're also honored just to be around the people that these fellowships and opportunity has put you around. And that's how I really look at things.
That's real, man. And if you could, I want to be in your shoes, for the time you were at you're pursuing your master's degree and obtaining your master's degree at the University of Birmingham in England with the Fulbright scholarship. Could you walk us through briefly the 3 key things that you learned, observed, and how you've grown during that time, coming from a war-torn country to Trenton, New Jersey, going to high school 2.9 to A&T, going to a 4.0, then seeing you getting rejected to a lot of stuff, but then finally getting that, and then getting the opportunity to see the world at one of the most prestigious colleges and universities. Bring us to that experience.
Man, Man, that's a heavy
I
question, but
know, bruh.
I would say the biggest is a few lessons I've learned. I mean, the British experience was phenomenal. It was eye opening. Had a chance to meet some amazing people from all around the world and develop friendship with people from countries I didn't know much about. And just that exposure to uh, living in a different country, even though I was born outside the U.S. Coming into an understanding of myself. Since coming into an understanding of myself, I haven't really traveled outside the country, so that experience was mind blowing. And when I say, man, I was around some of the most brilliant, talented, well connected people ever, and they constantly pushed us to be the best that we could, and there was no limitation. If you said you wanted to be the next president of a country, there wasn't anybody that didn't believe in you, and just being in that environment that was very supportive was beyond phenomenal, man. And to be in all honesty, some days, man, I sit back and I look at where I've come from and where life has taken me, and it's surreal. I don't really know, words can't even describe the feeling that comes to mind. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is that one, your life is gonna hit you no matter who you are, no matter what you do, you're gonna fail. And it's not about focusing so much on the failure, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge your failure. I think we have this thing where it's, oh yeah, if failure occurs, we look at it as either something that's gonna bring us down and we never get back up, or we try to brush it off and say, oh yeah, it's just a part of the ride, but we don't correct the mistakes that cause that failure.
Mm.
So what I've come to realize is that you gotta not only acknowledge your failure and acknowledge what it's trying to tell you. That failures are kind of like the signals in your body. When you gotta when your body's dehydrated, you might have a headache. Failure is life way of telling you that there's something that you're doing incorrectly that you need to fix. So, being able to recognize those signals and adjust and update your strategy to approach future challenges is one. Two, you have to remain humble. Because
Hmm.
one, accolades and awards, the thing is, are the world's way of validating you, right?
Hmm.
And as the world changes, their standards are going to change, and by being humble, you're grounded within yourself. Your value of yourself comes from within, so you're not latching on to these temporary validation mechanisms. Even the most prestigious fellowships that you receive, at some point you're going to get to a location where nobody knows about it. There was part of England that I went, nobody knew what a Fulbright fellowship meant. So in that environment, I was just Emmanuel Johnson, and being in a country where you're by yourself and not a lot of people know who you are, gives you that ability to re-humble yourself. Winning that Fulbright as the first in ANC history, there's a lot of news articles, there's a lot of people around, and it's easy to become boastful or to get on this pedestal, but going to a country where you're by yourself, although you have other cohort members and there are circles that understand what you guys have, there are times where nobody really gets it or nobody understands what an HBCU is. And it's a very humbling thing. So as you remain humble and you ground your happiness and what you value within yourself, you're then able to tackle and face whatever realities that life has painted for you at that moment. And then last but not least, man, is really diving deep within to find what your passion is and to following your passion no matter what. I think sometimes we get so caught up on the money and the materialistic things that we end up chasing these career paths that we hate, but we're stunting for other people. So these are different things, man. And then also just realizing, man, it's going to be a lot of hard work. It's not about to be easy, but if you follow your passion and you have that deep drive for what you do and that deep love, it's going to get you out of whatever hole you may be stuck in.
Man, that's powerful, and I'm not even gonna pontificate about. And I don't think I used that word right, but I just wanted to say it. I've been on
Right.
my head in a second, but about and kind of elaborate about what you said, because I mean, all you said is there, right there. And to your point, I wanted to ask you, what within that time or within the last 4 years, what has been your lowest point? And because I sometimes I frame it as a failure, but I really don't believe in that. But what has been your lowest point? And then kind of share with the audience how you was able to get out of that point.
I think. Man, I've actually hit a few lows, because like I said, man, it's not an easy thing. But I think one of my lowest points was, having won the Fulbright, I'm pursuing my master's. I decided to apply to graduate school, and at the time, I applied to six different graduate schools. Out of the six, I was rejected from five. And
That's
going
wild.
going back to the point originally, you people don't see the failures and all of that. So I was rejected from five of them, and the only one I got into at the time was the University of Southern California. And even when I got in, I didn't get into a PhD. I got into the master's program. So it kind of hit hard because um, I had put forth my best effort, did everything that I could, but yet again, I was still getting denied. And it was at that point I had to. It's easy to give other people advice, but sometimes it's hard to take your own advice.
Ooh,
So at that point in time, I had to kind of sit back and think about my life up until this point. Because I started to beat myself down. I started to feel like, man, maybe I'm just not qualified. Maybe I'm not this. Maybe I'm not that. But or and on the other side, I could have said, well, these schools just don't see talent, yada yada yada, or I'm the best person for this, but I had to take a step back and see, okay, what were my flaws and what was this failure telling me about what I needed to work on, as well as saying, you know what, just because they reject you does not necessarily mean that you're bad, because there are other top candidates. It's just something didn't add up, and that's why you were rejected. So it's finding that middle ground where I've learned from that failure, but also understanding that I shouldn't let it stop me. As has is how I got out of that rut and managed to find myself in a PhD program under the advisor that I have now. So that was one of my lowest points, man. But coming out of that, it made me that much more stronger and that much more willing to just try new things, even if it may not end up the way I intend.
man, that's powerful, man. I appreciate you sharing that, and I can't wait so the viewers the listeners can listen to that, because that's a powerful testimony right there. Because coming off Fulbright, great grades, a lot, like the world is everything seems limitless, and then the sending off those applications. I mean, it's not like you were new to this. You've been applying to all this stuff for a long time. So to send it out to all these universities, and then you go open the mail, you're like, yo, I think I got in, and then deny. You're like, what? Like, how does that doesn't even make sense? I'm a minority, I'm
Exactly.
killing it, but then get denied it. But then you had to take a step back and to look at it objectively, and to say, honestly, there was other qualified candidates that the programs might have been a better fit. So that's good for them. And then you really sat down and looked at those flaws and some of the things you had to work on, and then that kind of allowed you to get to that next level, man. And I guess, yeah, that's kind of it on that. And before we leave the past round, could you share what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now, 8 years ago? Is there anything you would tell yourself?
I would say the biggest thing I would tell myself is I should have went for a few more opportunities. And I think that naturally, as they said, hindsight is always 2020. I think in retrospect, there might have been one or two more opportunities I should have applied for. I should have took a little bit more serious, and perhaps that would have made my journey a little bit different. But at the same time, when I reflect on that question, I don't. I think that everything has led to a certain lesson that I would not have learned any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So I would apply for more opportunities, and I would have told myself, don't be afraid to fail, because that's just a natural part of it. You're going to get hit a couple times. Life is going to hit you with a few haymakers, man. But you just gotta keep on. You gotta keep on moving, man.
Got you, man. So that was a perfect first round, man. And now we're gonna transition to presently, kind of where you at, and then also give some actionable advice for those that are potentially looking into getting to the space you're in. So, explain to us now, kind of where you're at and what you do. Like, what does your life look like on a day-to-day basis now?
Okay. So as I stated, currently I'm a second year PhD student here at University of Southern California in the Computer Science Department. I work at the Institute for Creative Technology, and my research is in artificial intelligence in general, but more specifically emotion modeling. So what we do is we look at ways in which we could build computational models of human emotions to then be implemented in technology that is able to recognize as well as response to human emotion in a very interactive setting. So in that space, the domain that we're interested in is negotiation. So in a negotiation scenario, you have two agents. You have an object they're negotiating over, and each is trying to get what's best for them and do it in a way that's fair to their opponent. So when you put a computer system in that space, the system not only has to be able to recognize human emotion, but also for it to effectively not negotiate with a human being, it has to be able to follow the different protocols that we humans use when negotiating. So what we're trying to understand is what does that look like? How does emotion play into that? And how do we design a computer system that can recognize and negotiate with you while taking all of those variables into consideration?
Got you.
And that's what I'm currently building.
Quick question for all us non-tech, non-computer people in layman's terms, what is that? Like, you give us an example, paint that picture in layman's terms.
All right, so the easiest way to put it, man, we're trying to build a
Cause I
computer
got, cause
system
I
that
know
can
we talking to a
negotiate.
PhD student. And it's like I know it's like I'm sitting here like I mean it sounds like it's really dope, but I'm like I don't know what they talking about.
Nah, man. So what we're trying to do is build a computer system that could teach you how to negotiate. So, and in doing so, we know that people have emotions, right? So not only do we want the system to be able to recognize your emotions so it can negotiate more effectively, but we also want it to be smart in the way it does that, so that you can learn the best and most appropriate negotiation method.
When you say negotiation, what are you referring to?
Um, well, so the system is built more generally. So whether you're negotiating over a a car deal, or you're
Oh,
negotiating
okay,
a
that type of
contract,
intelligence, like a
whatever
real
type of
negotiating.
exactly.
Walk us through how was your first year in PhD school? Because I know we talked about it over the summer, but how was your first year in a doctorate program? Because I couldn't even fathom getting I mean I can getting a doctorate, but in robotics, like walk us through your first year.
Man, the first year was it was a heavy hitter, bro, because one is getting adjusted to California, two is getting adjusted to research, and then three is just being in a space where you're one of only three or four blacks in the program. So that was definitely challenging, man, and I got hit a couple times, but they all helped develop me into who I am today.
What was the most challenging part of it?
I think just managing everything, because at the PhD level, you have to think differently. You're constantly reading research papers, and a lot of these papers tend to be very convoluted and hard to understand. I'm not used to having to read something three, four times before I can even understand what this equation means. And typically in class, you run into an issue. You have the professors to help you. Here, you have your advisor, but at the same time, your advisor doesn't have much time to sit down and walk you through every little problem. So you have to be able to strategically use your advisor for those things that are that complicated, but also try to figure out things on your own. So it's a very the PhD I would say is more so a self discovery process than it is about the research, because you're learning about you, you're learning what works best for you, what kind of studying habits work best for you, when you work best during the day, and all of that. So it was a lot of lessons being taught at once, and it was overwhelming at times.
That's real, man. So what is a typical day like for you?
Typical day, I tend to be up by 7 a.m. Get a workout in, do some personal development stuff, go to class, then hit the lab, and whether it's reading research papers and trying to figure out what's the new focus I want to, or what route I want to take my research, or is actually trying to build some piece of software. Be in lab until about 8, 9. On a average days, a good day, I might leave a little earlier. On a bad day, I might leave a lot later. So that's really how it is. And, go to bed and do it all over again.
Every day for the next 5 years. So you're just in the lab, 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 workout, in the lab, in the lab, in the lab. So it's just constantly, constant. I want to talk a little bit about the how-to process because we didn't even speak on it, and we don't think we have enough time right now to speak on the process of how you even found out and got into the research programs at University of Michigan and Carnegie Mellon. But if you could specifically speak about working with NASA, like that's crazy. NASA, like the space agency. Can you tell us how that came about and and also holistically, how you were able to not only find those type of opportunities, research opportunities, internship opportunities, but get them?
A lot of it was through networking and just meeting the right people, sharing your goals and the ideas with them, and then they putting you in touch with somebody who had those opportunities. For me to say that I've gotten any of these opportunities on my own would be a complete and utter lie. Whether it was from a friend who previously worked at these internships and then forwarding my resume, or meeting somebody at a conference, it's always been through networks that has gotten me this far and has gotten me those different opportunities.
So I guess two things I got from that is one, your work sticks, not your name. And I know you're like, okay, what does that mean, Greg? Like your name, okay, Emmanuel Johnson Fulbright, that's not what sticks. It's more so the work that you did in the past, the work that you did, and that's what people are more inclined to reference you and that's how networking really works. It doesn't network, oh, I know Emmanuel just because your name is Bomo. It's more so I know Emmanuel due to the work that he does and he would be a good fit. And then the second thing I took from that is the power of you sharing what you wanted to do. Because even though that may seem simple, but there's a lot of us that are out here that we don't share with anybody what we really want to do.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, those two are great points, and you're absolutely right, man. Is the way I look at it is you can't be in all places at once, and oftentimes by you sharing your goals and what you're working on with other people, they're then able to be your marketing or your sales people when they meet other people who have similar interests. There's been a lot of opportunities I've gotten, not because I applied for it, but because somebody else felt that I was the best fit for what another person was looking for. And also, I would say too, man, just giving wholeheartedly. I think we get into this mindset where we're constantly trying to take from different relationships that we establish. But what I find is when you actually start to become beneficial to other people, you start giving freely and helping other people reach their goals, they tend to want to keep you around. They want to help you become successful. So those are the three things I think have really helped me throughout my career.
Man, that's real, man. So for somebody that's listening right now that may be considering a PhD, what would you tell them?
I would say one is definitely possible, but also realize that it's not you're not just going to get to that level just because you say you want to get a PhD. And it's not going to be an easy journey, but it's one that if you really love what you do, it's going to be rewarding, it's going to be fulfilling, it's going to be enjoyable. So so with all of that in mind, I would say one, figure out exactly what you want to pursue your PhD in terms of the field in general, not the specific project, and then start talking to people who have been in that field and start building your network around there. Because as you talk to people, they're going to give you different insights. They're going to tell you where to look, and they might even put you in touch with people who are in your field, and you never know where those relationships will lead to. And then two, make sure that you take care of the necessary documents and requirements needed for these programs, because no matter how much dreams and networks you have, if you don't meet the bare minimum requirement, there's very little your network can do for you. Now, granted, you might just end up having somebody that has that much influence, but it's definitely beneficial to your network and to those people who are advocating for you to have met a certain standard prior to applying.
Man, that's powerful. That's a gem that I think is applicable for everybody in a lot of different aspects. Is sometimes we might have a network or a person that could help us, but if you yourself are not ready for that help, then it's really pointless. Let's bring it to a
Exactly.
real world example. Like say if I have a friend that that say my friend has a dream of being in Hollywood and wants to be a director and he's a writer, right? And I have another friend who is actually working in Hollywood and is writing for shows and stuff like that, and he knows the system. But if my friend that's a writer doesn't have an online portfolio, doesn't really have anything to show, it wouldn't make any sense for me to connect him with somebody that's in that lane and be like, oh, here's my man, he got a lot of talent, if he hasn't been building his portfolio to even meet the minimum of helping out. Like, that's not a beneficial relationship for anybody. So that just goes to show that just because somebody might be in a position to help, before you even ask, or even if you're asking, like, okay, I would like to get this help, but what are some things that I need to do on my end so that it could be beneficial and it would make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think either way, it would be a beneficial connection for one person. But like you said, man, to hit that next step and really get the maximum benefit from that relationship, you have to have done your part. You have to have done your due diligence. Because, yeah, you're going to meet a lot of people who want to help you, but you bring a portfolio where they really can't work with. Then you put them in a weird position because they want to help you, but they really can't.
We're going to transition to our third round our final round before we get to the culture change, and that is the future. Because at the end of the day, I know you know where you're at personally, but I know you, and every guest we have on the show, y'all have a plan and somewhat of a vision for the future. So could you talk to our audience about what does 2016 look like for you? Because I know, although you're in your PhD program, you're working on a lot of other projects too. So what does your 2016 look like?
Man, right now, my ultimate goal is to be somewhere in the space of technology and entrepreneurship. So I'm trying to get some things off the ground. Outside of just my research, so one of my goals is to be in England this summer. Working on a research project. Cranking out some more publications, and getting closer to defining what my exact thesis is going to be from a research perspective. But outside of that, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, trying to do more side consulting on different technology projects, whether it be website design, app development, or just generally helping people turn their app ideas into actual product. I definitely want to get more on the consulting tip, learn a little bit more about finance in the business world as well, and begin to build my network in that space as I'm pursuing this PhD simultaneously. So it's a lot of taking, and then also, man, just spending more time with family, developing a closer relationship with God, and taking the time out to really enjoy where I am currently, and not focus so much on what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now, that I fail to realize the power of just living in the present at times.
You hit that on the head, man. That last point, like, own today. I said all my Snapchats and whatnot. Now, the theme for 2016, of course, is new levels, but own today. Because if you own today, your 5 years is going to look way more amazing than you trying to own what's going to happen in 5 years. Because honestly, we don't even know if we're going to be here in 5 years. And then two, I think in an earlier podcast, in a past episode with Michael Johnson, he says, at the end of the day, anything could happen, and everything that you're working on currently could drop, could fail. You can go,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
like, you can go to jail for something random. We black males. We can go to jail for something random we didn't do. We can get killed, or something could just happen. Life could change so quick. So if you're not grounded in kind of who you are, and goes back to what you said earlier in the podcast about knowing yourself outside of what other people may know. Like, when you went to New England, people didn't know anything about you or anything. They didn't know or to care. It's like, if you're not comfortable with who you are, you're going to feel inferior. You're going to feel just weird and just alone. So that is really deep, man. And also, too, end of the day, like, what do you want your legacy to be?
Man, if I want, I would say that if there were anything I would want people to say at the end of the day, was that I was somebody who made the best out of the situations that I presented with, regardless of what they were. And I hope that my life is an inspiration to kids around the world who feel as if they've been dealt the wrong cards in life. They feel like they weren't provided the same opportunities. They feel downtrodden. They feel inferior to others because of their background. That no matter where you are, no matter where you start, you know, it's possible. But not only that it's possible, but understand that you got to know the rules to the game, because anything is possible doesn't, and but it doesn't mean that anything will happen.
Hmm.
And I hope that my life serves as just another example of not only what can happen when you provide, kids who come from disadvantaged background the opportunity to be great, but also it serves as another example of what dedication, hard work, and a commitment to just bettering yourself on a daily basis means. And I hope that's what my legacy ends up being.
Man, that's powerful, man. I'll say nothing more on that, man. So that's the end of the third round, and let's get to the most exciting round, the fascinating round, the round that we get quick, fast snippets about what makes you you. And you know what that is. That is the culture change round. And this is a series of 5 rapid answer questions. And we're just gonna shoot from the hip. You ready?
All right, let's go.
What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Don't be afraid to fail.
What is one of your personal habits that you can attribute to your success?
Constantly reviewing my performance and assessing how well I did and correcting for the flaws that I've made.
Got you. Quick question. When you say, how do you review your performance? I mean, is there do you create a template, or you just have a couple quick questions you ask yourself, or?
So now, being that I'm in school, man, every semester I set goals. By the end of the semester, I review those goals to see what I've done, both in my personal, academic, financial, you name it. I have various categories and goals that I set for myself to accomplish. So after every semester, I sit back and I review it, and I give myself like essentially a grade on how well I'm doing. And then I say, okay, well, what is it that I need to correct, or what do I need to upgrade?
Got you. Boom. What is your favorite book and why?
I would say I like Steve Jobs' biography, and the reason
Mm,
why is because he was non-traditional, and he was raw, and he was real, and he was very transparent. I think that oftentimes when we read biographies, we read all these different things, we only get the good side. What Steve Jobs biography gave me was a good and a bad. So what it does is it showed the level of success that he has, but also it showed you what he had to give up to get there. So the question always comes in my mind: am I willing to be an a-hole just to have reached his level, or can I, but and then also you realize that you don't have to be like he was to get to his level, and being able to dissect your favorite people or your idols into the different components that they were, and understand that they're human and they have flaws, really kind of opened my eyes to what the future holds, you know
what inspires you and keeps you motivated the most?
in all honesty. One, I would say, is my mother. And I think just looking at how hard she's worked and the fact that she doesn't complain, she just does what she needs to do, has definitely been motivational. And just wanting to be in a position where I could, just tell her thank you for all that she's done for me up until this point. As well as my 3 younger sisters, just being able to be that example to let them know that anything is possible. But beyond that, as I stated earlier, my goal is to leave an impact on this world, and show kids that if you really have a dream and you take the time to grind, and grinding isn't just for working, it's also networking, understanding how the game is played, meeting different people, and also using the resource that you have to get where you want to get at. If you're willing to do all of those things and really push yourself to the next level, anything is possible.
Mm, it's powerful, man. The fifth question, the last question is, if you were the president of the United States, what is the first thing you would do?
Man, um, honestly, bro, I probably, as much as I want to say, man, I'll start this policy, man. I'll probably just take pictures in the White House and pinch myself, make sure I'm kind of myself. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't know what to do, man. I have to take a picture and keep it, and probably take, walk people through like a tour, a virtual tour of the White House to make sure it's actually happening, just in case they kick me out. I can say I actually did it.
All the time. But the thing is, though, you have to have the most epic caption in the world, like president. Like, what does that caption look like? Do you go captionless? Do you say "pound White House" or "I met," like, "we made it," or like what?
Bro,
What do you?
I feel like, man, just having a picture is
president is all you need.
No
You know what
captionness.
I mean? Geotag your White House. Probably put my crib. And keep it moving. Like, what else do I need to say at that point, man? That's how I look at it.
Whole time, man. So, one last question, because at the end of the day, the theme, I call myself the culture change agent. All the stuff that we do, what you're doing, you're changing the culture, you're changing the dynamic. So, the last question, a little deep, is this is outside of the culture change round, is if you could change one thing about society, most specifically the African American culture, what would it be and why?
I would say our overemphasis on money, man. And the reason being is when you take money out of the equation, you find that people have no other reason to pursue these things that they don't care about.
Ooh.
Because once money gets eliminated, why are you going to go to that job that you hate? And that's when people start to sit back and say, man, what am I doing with my life? This materialistic culture and this capitalistic culture we live in has constantly pushed us towards a heavy emphasis on money, on living this lavish lifestyle that we can't afford. And I'm not one to go into depth to say, well, it's to and blame anybody, but I think once we stop focusing so much on that and really understand that when we're passionate about something, when we truly learn how the game is played, the money is going to come. So if I could eliminate the necessity of money for a short period of time for people to kind of find out what they really care about, I think that'd be the most beneficial thing.
That wraps up this episode. And before we go, man, I got two things. One, could you provide where people can find more information about you, getting in contact with you for our listeners?
Man, I have my website I have my website exjohnson.com. You can follow me on Instagram, EJ_the man. Add me on Facebook. Shoot me an email, Emmanuel Johnson 609 at gmail.com. I'm easy to be reached, man. I'm not that hard.
Guys, we'll have all that information on the show notes, man. And before we let him go, I just want to thank him for the bottom of my heart for giving us an hour plus of his time, his resources, his advice, his thoughts, his failures, his successes. I mean, it really means a lot. You're like my brother, man, and I definitely think the world is going to be able to get a lot from this interview, man. So thank you for being on this show, bro.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me, brother.
No doubt. So, as you all can tell, this is the end of this episode. It's been a phenomenal episode. I pray that you got some jewels, some nuggets that you can apply to your life. Or you just learned a cool story about a young man that had a 2.3 GPA in high school, and now he is a PhD candidate at the University of Southern California, as well as a Fulbright scholar. And that's just powerful. It's very, very powerful. So, thank you again. I need you to do three things before we end off this call. Not this call, this podcast. The first being, if you haven't already, please rate or review our podcast on iTunes and subscribe. If you're listening via SoundCloud, please subscribe on SoundCloud too. Number two, please share this episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. And number three, next week, I'm actually going to read through the format for the last episode of this season, and I'll actually bring on Travis Jackson, CEO of HBCU Pride Nation, and he will actually be interviewing me. So if you have any questions as far as my life, entrepreneurship, podcasting, any questions you have about the first season, submit them to greg@greggyhill.com. Send me all your questions. I'll make sure I answer them, or you can hit me up on Twitter @GreggyHill, Instagram @GreggyHill, Facebook Gregory E. Hill, or just go to the website, leave a comment. So definitely send me your questions. I'll make sure I answer them on the question and answer portion. And like I said, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your support this season. It's been phenomenal. Next season, we're going to take it to a whole nother level. So just bear with us as we continue to grow. So as it's custom to do, I need you to do one thing. I know you're like, Greg, you just asked me to do four things. What's that one thing, Greg? That one thing is change the freaking culture. Good night.